Last but not least, based off of many of these factors, we will come up with an analog composite that will detail what each month of the winter season is likely to entail. And the way that this weighting process was done was based off of similarities. If there is one similarity found, no weight was given. If two or more similarities were found, then one less weight than the number of similarities present was applied. So, for example, if four similarities were found, only 3 weights would be applied to the resulting analog package. And so these are our primary analogs. The number one analog I found was 2010 to 2011, where 5 similarities are present, and followed by 1998 to 1999, where 4 similarities were present. These are the secondary analogs, where 3 similarities were present to the current pattern, and the tertiary analogs are where 2 similarities are present to the current pattern. This is what December looks like, and this is actually the coldest and snowiest month relative to what the rest of the winter will entail. So this will be a front-loaded winter, so to speak, as most of that colder than normal air is in the eastern 2/3 of the country. In the western third, we have warmer than normal temperatures and ridging, most likely, an area high pressure, and we have warmer than normal temperatures into New England. These are substantial anomalies relative to the 1951 to 2010 baseline, given how many years are in here, indicating there is generally good agreement on a colder December to start off the winter season. However, once we get into January, some changes will be afoot. But notice that these anomalies really aren't that extreme for January. This, to me, kind of shows the analogs kind of disagreeing with each other in terms of how the pattern will evolve for January. What this shows me is that the analogs are disagreeing on when the pattern is going to change from cold to a warmer pattern. It is perfectly possible that the pattern for most of January could be colder and snowier than average, but it is also possible that, based off of the analog composite here, that most of January could also be warmer and less snowy than average. It really depends on when exactly the pattern changes in January, and this is really impossible to tell, but we know that the pattern will change sometime in January. It's just a question of when. Notice these yellows really aren't too extreme. They're like +2 to +5, as indicating the scale below. But you can see there are some areas of +1 to +2, but overall a very kind of jumbled signal for January. Much less so for February, as we have a trough signal in the west here and a very expansive southeast ridge for the east in February, as a result of it rearing its head, so to speak, for the second half of the winter once the warmer than normal pattern takes place. This is what the overall winter looks like in the analog package. You can see we have an area of relative cool in the northern part of the country, and the New England part of the United States is warmer than average, as is much of the other parts of the country. Notice we have a storm track that looks to be going right through the eastern part of the country here as a result of these above normal precipitation anomalies. This below normal precipitation anomalies to me indicates that you will have a southeasterly ridge throughout most of the winter, as that bubble of high pressure is allowing for storms to steer to the west of this southeasterly ridge and allow for these warmer than normal temperatures to flourish for most of the winter into this part of the country. And so one of the factors that could lead to this pattern shift is a reintensification of the stratospheric polar vortex. Right now, it is very weak, actually one of the weakest polar vortexes we have seen in record keeping. However, it is forecast to strengthen, and it should be noted, though, that stratospheric forecasts are subject to large uncertainty, but there are other factors at work that do favor a relatively quick intensification of the stratospheric polar vortex. Now, depending on how quickly it intensifies will determine when exactly in January the stratospheric changes will progress downward into the troposphere, meaning that whenever those negative anomalies start to appear over the Arctic pole, as in the polar vortex strengthening, will determine when those changes will be brought down from the stratosphere to the troposphere, and when the Arctic Oscillation will be biased to a more positive state as a result of that polar vortex strengthening. And as we have gone over this, this is a common factor we'll see during a positive Arctic oscillation, as the cold air is locked up by the pole, whereas a weaker polar vortex during a negative Arctic oscillation favors colder air into the mid-latitudes. And so here's the official forecast. The warmest temperatures right along the east coast here, and into the southeast, near normal for the Midwest. And depending on where exactly the storm tracks go, I suspect that most of the storm tracks will allow for a change to rain along the coast here. Some of them may be mostly snow for the interior right here. And so the warm air advection out in front of many of these storms won't be as much, but you'll still see it flip to warm in February, and you'll still see positive anomalies for the winter forecast as a whole. And so, as a result of this storm track, below normal snow is favored for the south and east, near normal for the interior parts of the northeast, even for the lakes right here. If the lakes remain very warm and you have consistent bouts of troughiness, you could still see above average snowfall along the lake belts right here of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Above average snow is favored for the Midwest as a result of persistent storm tracks up the Appalachians. Near normal snow is expected for interior Northeast, as we have just described before. Above normal precip is favored for the northern part of the country, whereas below normal precipitation is favored for areas that will be dealing with those southeasterly ridge conditions throughout most of the winter. And so the key points, as we mentioned before, December is likely to be the coldest and snowiest month for the season. The pattern will progress to an overall warmer than normal pattern sometime in January, and as we've gone over, it is unclear when exactly this will occur. February will likely be the warmest and the least snowy, and while below normal snowfall is likely for the southeast, above normal snowfall is favored for the interior northeast into the Great Lakes region. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great rest of your week.